So without further ado, we bring him back, friend, teammate, schoolmate, director of pro personnel for the Dallas Cowboys, our Cowboys insider, Judd Garrett. Judd, good morning, and welcome back to Laying Down the Law.
Good morning. How you guys doing?
Wonderful, wonderful. How you doing today?
We are well, my man. We are very well.
Good.
The draft in the books for 2014, and the Dallas Cowboys selections are in now. Minicamp going on, Judd, still, or what's happening?
Yeah, we have one more practice today at 10:30. We got a morning practice from 10:30 to 12, and then the rookie minicamp's over after that. So we had good practices on Friday, good tempo. Guys showed up, played well. We had some injuries, some soft tissue injuries, so we sort of had to back it down a little bit on Saturday, cut down some of the reps just because we lost some numbers. But we're going to be back to more full strength this morning. So, but it's been going well, and then the guys that we drafted came in and looked good. So we've been pleased.
Yes, and Judd, as the world unfolds in the National Football League, it has been said that Johnny Manziel was the highest person on the board at the time at 16 for the Cowboys. Nonetheless, I think you stick to your plan. You build your football team for success, and that's as a whole. I know it's a business as well. Man, I would have loved to, go out and buy a Johnny Manziel Cowboys jersey, but I believe wisdom and common sense prevailed, and the offense and defensive line needs for the Cowboys a little bit more important, even though Tony Romo comes off surgery, and I think a wise choice for the team.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Manziel is a great talent, and I believe he's going to be a really good NFL football player. So it was very tempting when he was sitting there. But, we have Tony Romo. Tony Romo's been making very good progress coming back from the surgery. We're locked into him for a number of years. So, quarterback's the one position that you can't really carry, two guys like that and put all those resources into that one position because only one quarterback plays at a time. You can over-resource other positions, defensive line, corner, receivers, because you can get 2 to 3 receivers on the field at the same time. You can't do that with the quarterback position, so you have to be very careful how you spend your resources with that position, and we have some money invested into Romo. And on the other hand, one of our issues has been, the offensive line over the course of the past few years, and Zach Martin sitting on the board staring right at us. He's a hell of a football player. He started 50-plus games, for Notre Dame in his career. He's never been hurt, just been productive, game in and game out. We have tremendous faith that he's going to come in and be a long-time starter for us. And you put him in place, and now with Tyron, with Travis, you got Zach Martin, you got Doug Free at the right tackle who's coming off a good year. And now, you look at it, and a part of our team, which was a weakness, has now become one of the top 10 offensive lines in the National Football League. And you look at teams like San Francisco, they have 3 first-rounders on their offensive line, and they go out there and they run the ball and they protect the quarterback, and they're very productive and they're very successful. So, if you look at that type of model, that's one way of having success in the National Football League. So, again, Johnny Manziel is very tempting. It's hard to pass up on a talent like that because he is a very talented player. He's got great instincts and can do some wonderful things with the ball. But when you take a step back, what was the best decision for the football team? I think our decision ended up being the right one.
Absolutely, Judd. We're talking with Judd Garrett, our Cowboys insider, director of pro personnel for the Dallas Cowboys. And, Judd, you have a ring from the Dallas Cowboys as a Super Bowl champion. You rushed tremendously well in college. You led the World League in receiving, and you can't have those things without the foundation. And to me, as much as I'd like to say that you and I, as rushers of the football and receivers of the football, can't do it without that line. And then that you don't pass as much, which means you can control the clock with the run game. You have guys like DeMarco Murray, and shorten the game sometimes, or just pound people and control the clock in the game. And those are things that you love to have on your side if you're playing football.
Exactly. I mean, obviously the positions that get all the headlines, quarterback, running back, receivers, they're scoring the touchdowns, they're getting the stats. But exactly what you said, if you don't have an offensive line, if you're not winning up front, it's very hard for those guys to be successful. Barry Sanders probably the one of the few players in the history of the league that played behind a mediocre offensive line and had unbelievable success. Most players need to have that support from the guys up front to give them the chance to be successful. That's sort of what we did. That's what we're trying to do. And the other thing is, if you look at the number of our games over the past 2 to 3 years, we play a lot of close games. We've played a lot of close games. I think we played the most one-score games in the league over the last 3 years. And one of our issues has been having the lead and not being able to finish the game by just turning and handing the ball off and running the clock out. That way, we always get behind schedule, take a 2-yard loss or get a no gain on a running play. Now we got to throw the ball, and that becomes dicey in those situations. So the stronger you are up front, we got a good runner, in DeMarco Murray. We signed Ryan Williams yesterday. So we're getting a good offensive line. We're getting some good backs together. And hopefully when we get that 3-point lead at the end of the game, with 5 minutes left, we can just hand it off, get 3 first downs, kneel on the ball, and have the victory, as opposed to trying to throw the ball to get first downs and then putting our defense back on the field and asking them to make another stop. This way, we can end the game the way we want to. So it was a good move all around.
Absolutely. We're talking with Judd Garrett, Director of Pro Personnel for the Dallas Cowboys and our Cowboys Insider. Judd, what about the defensive side of the ball? How do you believe this draft and what you've done so far in free agency has served the club?
Well, I mean, we took DeMarcus Lawrence, in the second round. We traded up to get him, and that was one of our issues last year, was we weren't getting a whole lot of pass rush. We weren't getting a lot of sacks. And this is what this guy does. He's got some great pass rushing traits. I think when Rod Marinelli, Leon Lett get their hands on him, they're really going to be able to hone his abilities, to make him a very good pass rusher for us. So we're able to get someone early in the draft, that's going to help fill that need. And then, we're getting Crawford back. We signed Henry Melton. We're adding other pieces. We signed, Mincy from Denver last year. So we're getting some pieces in place, to fill some of the holes on the defensive line where we got a pass rusher. So we're feeling pretty good. We don't have maybe the marquee names, the Hatcher, the Wares, but what we do have is we have much better depth. And if you watched our team last year, when our starters were playing on the front, in the front four, we did pretty well on defense. And the issue was that, when we took them out, because the guys on the defensive line can't play 100% of the snaps. They usually play between 60 to 65% of the snaps, and then you get your wave players in after that. When we went to our second team, that's when our defense got exposed, because our depth wasn't exactly where we needed it to be, because we had so many injuries. We had Nick Hayden and George Selvey starting for us. When we signed those guys, they were seen as rotational players, third tackle, third end. They became starters. So then, our backups, weren't where they need to be. What we've done in the off season, we didn't get the marquee names, but we've just continued to add depth to that defensive line, so we'll be able to play in rotation. And that's what Seattle does. If you look at Seattle...
I was going to say, Judd, I don't know a starting defensive lineman for Seattle. but they're getting fitted for a ring that you have as a Super Bowl champion. So it doesn't necessarily matter as long as you get the rush and the chaos in an offensive backfield. There could be 3 Smiths, 3 Jones, or 3 Williams or whatever, and add a fourth if you have a 4-3 line. But pressure busts pipes, and it disrupts timing and makes it difficult for an offense. We have Spencer Connolly in studio today, Judd. He has a question for you.
Judd, I wanted to ask you, I initially credited the weak pass rush last year to the injuries and the fact that you guys switched up your defense. So there's a lot of guys going to a defense that you went from the 3-4 to the 4-3 where you were comfortable, where you saw a lot of success out of Hatcher and you saw a lot of success out of Ware, just trying to give them time to get comfortable in the new defense, in a new system, under a new coach. I attempted to try to give the credit to that versus you guys having big names. I don't think that it's so much about the big names versus the guys being comfortable with what they were doing.
I agree with you to a certain point. I think there was a transition part for a guy like DeMarcus Ware. I mean, he's played the weak outside linebacker in the 3-4 for his entire career. So now we moved him to a defensive end with his hand on the ground, and I think there was an adjustment period for him. He didn't maybe make that transition the way he should have. But if you look at a guy like Jason Hatcher, he had his best year of his career. He'd been strictly a 5 technique, more of just a guy 2-gapping and taking on the offensive tackle his whole career. When he's got some nice quickness, he's got some nice length. So when we moved him to the 3 technique in the 4-3, that was sort of taking advantage of what he does. So there was some of the guys, the transition wasn't quite what we needed to be. A guy like Ware, but the change helped Hatcher. So I'd say yes and no. We didn't have Ratliff, and we were planning on Ratliff being our nose. We were planning on Spencer playing more than just one game. So and then we lost Crawford. I mean, Crawford's going to be a very good football player in the league. And, he showed some great things his rookie year, and we were looking forward to him playing a lot for us. And, he popped his Achilles, early on in training camp last year. And that was devastating because, when you have a guy like, Tyron Crawford as your 5th best defensive lineman, that's a good position to be in because, he's a talented player. So we lose him, then we lose Spencer, then Ratliff's not playing. So we were sort of depleted, but I get your point. I think Ware, struggled a little bit in the transition from the 3-4 to the 4-3. So, so it was a combination of both, the change of scheme, but also the injuries.
Now, Jude, is it? Do you guys find it difficult, especially with the Dallas market, when you guys are sitting in the draft room and you're trying to pick players, and as difficult it is to serve and to cater to the Dallas market, how do you guys handle that pressure? I'm a personal friend of Bill Bates, and he told me, he said, Spencer, I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't watch ESPN, I couldn't turn on the radio while I was a Cowboy because if I would have, I would have been so discouraged because of how tough that market is. I was listening to I used to live in Dallas. I lived in Plano, and I was listening to the sports radio one time, and I can't remember this guy's name, but the Dallas, you guys had lost a game that you should have won, and he called you guys a bunch of gutless, worthless pigs. And after listening to what Bill told me, and then I heard what this gentleman said, I was like, man, if I was a Cowboy, listening to how difficult it is to cater to that market, I'm sure it has to affect some of the decisions you guys make, and it makes them tough being on the inside.
Yes and no. I mean, I understand your point, and I've been in other places. I've been in New Orleans, I've been in Miami, I've been in St. Louis, and this is a tough market, no question about it. And I remember a couple of years ago when I first got here, I sort of expressed the same sort of sentiment that you just talked about to my brother Jason, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, would you rather be at?" And he named it. Team, I don't want to say it because I don't want to.
Would you rather be? You could get with this, or you could get with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Dallas. Would rather be at that team, and I said, "Well, no." He said, "Hey, there's a price to wearing the star, and that's
I like
that's
that.
it. So
I like that.
So you have to deal with that, and that's all part of it, and you just have to be disciplined, and you have to know when to tune it out, and in the end, you brought up the draft. You can't let the outside influences in the media or fans or someone blogging on the internet to influence what decision you make.
I'll tell you what, Spencer. I've known Judd for a long time. They have been coached by their parents extremely well. Yeah. And I've had the opportunity to play and be a champion with Judd in college in intramurals. I've had the opportunity to compete against them when he was a freshman and they were at Columbia. Then an opportunity to be a teammate of theirs in college and et cetera to present day. They're not affected. It's out there,
right? But when you're talking Bill Bass,
I understand that,
and he's not a quarterback.
I understand.
So
that.
you can find very few people in any sport that can stay with one team for 20 years.
Right, understand that.
I'm just saying the market there has to be tough.
It's tough, but that the higher you fly, the less air is up there for you.
Well, and it was
Judd,
a great
I tell you this, man, cannot say that we'll absolutely know how this draft class works out initially, but we'll see some bright spots along the way. Can you of course stay with us throughout these weeks with OTAs leading up to training camp and then into the season? Just, if there's any updates, we'd love to have them. I don't want to keep you. I know you got an hour before you got to get out on the field. Certainly good to hear your voice. Tell Jason, said hello, and the rest of the crew, and we'll stay in touch on and offline. And I will see you up at Jason's football camp back at school here in a few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And anytime want me to come back on, just let me know, and I'll be glad to do it.
You're a Cowboys insider, man. You know you're going to come back on. So
yeah, okay.
We certainly appreciate it. Listen, have a great Sunday. Tell the guys stay healthy, hydrate at practice, and it's great to hear from you. Thanks for the insight as our Cowboys insider and friend to the show, Judd Garrett. Back to practice there in Dallas, and great to have him on the show. Thank you, Judd.
All right, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. We're going to have a sidebar. Come back. Stay with us. A lot going on today.
Laying down the law.